morning, everyone. Sabbath greetings to you. This is the anniversary of the seventh day of creation. We get to celebrate it each week and to revive our hearts, refresh our spirits, be awakened anew to the beauty of this seventh day, the holiness of it. May it just wash over you like a wave at the ocean. The blessing that was placed upon it, may it be upon your life and upon your heart and upon your mind. The shalom that rests within it, may it overwhelm you and transform you from glory to glory, from weight of kingdom impact to higher weight of kingdom impact. And the delight, may you delight in this Sabbath as the Holy One delights in you and in his creation. So this is a particular Sabbath. It is the Sabbath of Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah, the part of the Torah scroll that we think of as being between Genesis 23:1 and Genesis 25:18. So about 3 chapters, almost 3 chapters in total, in sort of the middle of the book, or right before the midpoint of the book of Genesis. It's a great story being told. There's a great mystery unfolding. A great plan is being revealed. And so this is a part of that great plan. I talked last week a little bit about the chiasm of the patriarchal chronicles, and I don't want to go too detailed into that, but I do want you to understand that we are at the fourth of the third of the six, the seven of the chiasm. And so the third parsha, we are almost at the crest of the wave. The reason that a chiasm is used in literature, particularly in scriptural literature, is to create wave energy. The divine words, the divine messages are intended to wash over you like a wave at the beach, from valley, from low point, from trough, all the way rising in intensity up to crest, and then coming back down, bringing you on the backside of the wave, former days up to the crest, latter days after the crest. And so we are approaching the crest. Next week's Parsha Toldot, will be the crest of this great wave. And then we'll start the descent, and we'll get the latter days portion. We'll get Vayetzi, the story of Yaakov and his encounter with the Holy One at Bet-El, the vision of the staircase, and the ascent and the descent of angels from the earth into the heavens. We will then get into Vayishlach, and we'll get into Vayeshet, my mind just left me there, the ninth parsha. And so this chiasm tells you that we're going to be corresponding. After the wave, we'll see Vayetzi, and before the wave, we see Parsha Chayei Sarah. And both, at the center point of both, is the household of Laban, and is the prototypical bondage, the prototypical entrapment of the world for the people of God. So we see that happening. We'll see it happen in Chayei Sarah, and we'll see it happening as well in Vayetzi. Now, Parsha Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah. We have recently, about 40 days ago, we had Yom Kippur. 47 days ago now, we had Yom Kippur, and then we had the Feast of Sukkot. Oh, what a wonderful time. The weather was glorious. The atmosphere was wonderful. It was before all the trauma of the election in America and the different things that have gone on, the murder in Paris, and all the things that have happened in the world that cause us to have great consternation and worry. It was a time of rejoicing and celebration. That was only a little bit over 40 days ago. But since that time, we've left the majesty, the beauty, the wonder of Jerusalem in our rearview mirror. We have headed home. We've gotten back into the tyranny of the mundane, the ordinary day-to-day life. This where things happen, where stuff occurs, where the news is bad, where the tempers are short, where the nerves are shot, where these things are. This is where we have gotten to in our time period, and even so, the Holy One is still our King, and he is still our God, and he is still directing our paths. He is still the angel who watches over us. We'll see that development in Parsha Chayei Sarah. But since we are now back at our marketplaces, our houses, our communities, our fields, our orchards, we're seeing the mundane take place, and that is where the real work of the kingdom takes place. Not in the glory days, not in the days of excitement and enthusiasm. The real work of the kingdom takes place in the midst of the mundane, and you will see that play its way out as well in the journey of the servant and how he infuses the holy into the common in that process. Parsha Chayei Sarah, the major prototypical events that we're going to talk about, we'll begin by talking about the death and the burial of Sarah. Okay, most of you say, can we just fast forward? I don't want to talk about death. I don't want to deal with the issue of the sting of death and how it works. But this is a critical part. In the mundane, in the trough, and in the rising of the crest, we need to understand that death in this world is something we know. Yeshua understood it. Yeshua dealt with Lazarus' death, both the man Lazarus and the parable of Lazarus. He dealt with the resurrection. He was the resurrection of the life. Yeshua, as the master taught us, he said, learn how to face and overcome death, both the death of yourself and the death of other people. So death and burial of Sarah. And we have some very fascinating things. We're going to have the Torah's first discussion of mourning protocol. What do you do when someone you love passes away? When they reach the vanishing point, as I like to say, their body disappears, so to speak, or begins to disintegrate because their spirit has reached the vanishing point and they have left. What do you do? How do you handle it? And I hear this all the time in my life, my practice, my activities that I do here at Biblical Lifestyle Center. What do you do when someone passes away? People ask always questions. What are the protocols? What do they call it when you burn them? Someone help me. What? Cremation. Is cremation biblical? Is it spiritual? What is that? If you buried, should you embalm? Should you not embalm? How quickly should you bury? These are the situations that people ask about. And what does it mean? Where are they? Where did my loved one go? And my always response is, can these bones live? Part of the prophetic message that the Creator has given to me, the cry of my heart, is the Ezekiel cry, and it is, can these bones live? No matter what you think you see, can these bones live again? So we'll talk about some mourning protocols very briefly, and the four basic protocols that are listed in the Hebrew tongue, Hebrew verbiage, are bo, will go to that place. Safad, which is there's a beating, there's a rhythm. Some call it the beating of the chest. Some call it the beating of the drum slowly. The sense of a communal, an engagement to a beat, to the beat, the sounding. Something has to keep you going forward in these times of trauma, and the beat goes on, as Sonny and Cher once said. And then there's the baka protocol. The baka is the tears, the release, the flow. At some point in every grieving process, there is that moment, that point of tears. It sometimes comes quickly. It sometimes takes years. But it will eventually come when the tears are released, the baka protocol. And that is a normal part of life and is a part of the moving on. And then there's the kavar, which in Hebrew, in English, basically translates to building the mound, taking the earth and building the mound. This is burial as we think of it, but not so much just burial in the earth, but actually covering the deceased with the burial mound in this process. And that's the kavaring. And when the kavaring takes place, the dead is out of your sight. So these are the protocols of mourning that we need to understand from a Hebraic standpoint, lest we be caught up in our cultural elements of grief, which Paul called grieving as those who have no hope. We are not those. The next major prototypical event that's referenced in this parsha this week will be Abraham's acquisition of Machpelah. Sarah's tent was empty. If you can imagine how many years Abraham and Sarah had their tents in the same location and the bustling activity and the energy and the passion, the fire of the camp was at Sarah's tent. The candle was burning. The challah was the smell of the bread was baking. This was the place of all, the center of the activity. And so suddenly, what we have is Avram walks out day after day and looks over to Sarah's tent, and nothing, no activity, no fragrance, no movement, no light. It's the dark tent, and this drives him to the next phase, which is his acquisition of the cave, and then the search for the wife, the Isha for Yitzhak, the bride, the wife for Yitzhak, and also at the same time, not just a bride for Yitzhak, but a matriarch for the people of the covenant, and someone to occupy and bring life back to Sarah's tent. And then we'll have in the latter part of the story of the bringing of the bride, the wife, the Isha, the Imah, the matriarch, into the tent of Sarah. We'll have this very strange but beautiful discussion of the interaction and the relationship and the emotion that passed between Rivka and Yitzhak, Isaac and Rebecca, as people like to think of in this land. And we'll see a phrase that we have not seen before. We'll see that Yitzhak loved Rivka. This hasn't been mentioned before in Torah. This concept has not been brought up before, that a husband and wife relationship and a prototypical matriarch is built and based upon love, and this sense of unselfish love, this sense of giving love, this sense of not romance and not attraction and not some sort of physical draw, but a sense of truly honoring and serving another person out of respect, out of a sense of evaluation, of I see the value in you, I see the purpose in you, and therefore I will serve you in ways that go far beyond what I expect in return because of the worth that I see in you and the value I hold of this relationship. And so we see this foundation of a covenant marriage taking place, being exposed to us in the final words, final messages of the description of the acquisition of a bride. And then we will see as Avraham looks and sees the tent of Sarah filled, and his son Yitzhak now having a bride, and them getting to know each other and see this love developing, he will begin to turn his attention to the rest of his life, and he'll have 35 more years. Avram's last 35 years will be filled and it's going to say at the end that he when he dies, when it's his turn to reach the vanishing point, he will do so as a man satiated, full. I think in English it says old and full of years, but the word old is not in the text in the Hebrew. It is full, satiated. He is at his fullness. That is when he reaches his vanishing point and disappears. And so Avram will die, and we'll see his progeny. We'll see who's left of his family, the new family that he created with Keturah, the 6 sons that he had with her. And then we'll start talking about how he is buried, his burial process, and how we have this strange thing of a reconciliation of sorts between Ishmael and Yitzhak, at least for the purposes of burying Abraham in the cave of Machpelah. Fascinating passage, very short scripture, very short description of it, but the implications are amazing of the reconciliation between Yitzhak, Isaac, and the children of the promise, and Ishmael, the son of the bondmaid, and when they reconcile and they co-labor in this matter. And then the listing of the descendants of Ishmael, the wild donkey of a man whose hand is against his fellow, and his descendants, and we see really we're laying the foundation for what's going to happen in Parsha Toldot. Next week, when we see Esau, he takes a wife from the sons and daughters, actually, of Ishmael, and how that turns out, and what that looks like, and why maybe we went the way Avram went the way he did with regard to choosing a bride for Yitzhak. All right, so these are the basic prototypical events. I hope you'll be tuning in, strapping your seatbelt on, keep your arms and legs, your limbs inside the vehicle at all times, and hold on tight to the bar in front of you. We've got a long way to go. Let's talk about where we left off last week. Everything in Torah is about context, context, context. Context. What is the context in which we're going? Well, what was the beginning of the cresting of the wave last week before we got to the place we are now? Well, we had the Akedah was the last kind of thing we had talked about in any detail. The Akedah, the binding of Yitzhak, and up on Mount Moriah. And at the conclusion of that event, after the ram was shown and the Holy One, the angel of the Holy One, then speaks and says, on the mountain of the Holy One, he will be seen or made manifest or revealed or made corporeal. And then he goes on and speaking to Avram, he says, blessing? I will bless you. Multiplying? I will multiply your seed as the stars of the heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your seed will possess the gate of their enemies. And in your seed, all the ethnicities, all the nations of the earth will receive blessing because you have shemad my voice. These are the words of the angel of the Holy One. These are ringing in Abraham's ears, I'm sure. They would be ringing in mine. Blessing? I will bless you. Multiplying? Oh, I will multiply you. As the sand of the sea and of the stars of the heaven, and your seed will possess the gates of the enemies, and in your seed will all the ethnicities, all the people groups, all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have shemad my voice. Now that's an amazing promise. That's an amazing something to really carry with you. And so Abraham, I believe, carried that with him. And then it goes on to say, as our last verses of last week's parsha, so Abraham returned to his young men, and they rose and went together to Beersheba. Beersheba. And Abraham dwelt at Beersheba, and it came to pass after these things that it was told to Abraham. So a messenger comes out of nowhere. This is the last thing we're going to get to before this week's parsha. Abraham gets a message. Somebody shows up out of nowhere. Man, angel, I don't know, but somebody came to tell Abraham something. There's a secret that he needed to know for what's going to happen in Parsha Chayei. What did he need to know? He says, indeed, Milcah has borne children to your brother Nahor. Now, Abraham had two brothers. He had Nahor, who was still living, and he had Haran, who was dead. Milcah was the daughter of Haran, the daughter of Haran. So was Iscah, but Milcah and Iscah were daughters of Haran. I know this is kind of hard to follow when you're not looking at it on a chart. But we had, basically it's Abraham's niece, the daughter of her deceased father, the brother. According to ancient tradition and what would become entrenched in the biblical process, Abraham took Iscah, or Sarah, to be his wife so that he could raise up children unto the dead brother, as so did Nahor with the other sister, the other bereaved, fatherless child, which was Milcah. And so Nahor marries Milcah, takes Milcah, and now the message that's come from is that your brother Nahor has actually born children, birth children or sired children through Milcah, and there are 8 of them, as a matter of fact. And so we have this whole new generation of people from your bloodline, which is now up in the village of Nahor, in the place of Aram Naharim. So this is the last message, and most of it just read right past it, not thinking what in the world, why are we being told that all these people are now living up in Aram Naharim, or Haran, the place of Haran, because it's about to become a big center point in the story, and we have to know. So this is where we left off last week. That's our context. The objective of all of this, of everything the Holy One has done with Avram, everything he will do with Yitzhak, everything he will do with Yaakov, everything he will do with you, is not just so that Avram, Yitzhak, Yaakov, you can have a good time relating to God. so you can have a more valuable existence by virtue of your relationship with the Holy One. The purpose, the ultimate objective, is that a baton of the kingdom would pass into your hand. You would carry it for the standard of your life, and then you would pass it on to someone behind you. That there would be a transgenerational, transcendent passing of this great covenant baton. So this is that parsha in which we begin to see the transmission, the transformation, the transgenerational impact begin to take place. And I call it leading across generations. It is one thing to ask you a question and say, what is your impact upon your generation? Most of us say, well, I don't know if I have any impact on my generation. Well, you do, whether you know it or not. It may be minimal. It may be confined to geography. It may be confined to social media. But it's somewhere or other you have some level of impact upon your generation. But that's not the ultimate question. The ultimate question is, what impact does your life have, will your life have, on future generations? On all generations of man, on the kingdom's plan, the grand plan of redemption for mankind as a species, bloodline by bloodline and household by household, and for the restoration of creation, acre by acre, inch by inch, to its original intended state of beauty, fruitfulness, shalom, and harmonious inner working. Now, what is your transgenerational impact? Now, when you're 20, this doesn't make much difference. When you're 19 or 18 or 16, you think, I'm not worried about that. When you reach a certain point in life, you will begin to think about it. Usually it's age 40. By age 40, you're usually pretty kicked into the process of, I'm not going to be here forever. What will be the impact I leave? Well, this is the parsha for you. This is the time for you to be thinking, wait a minute. And if you're younger than 40, guys over here at this table, girls at this table, if you're younger than 40, ones who are listening and watching by video today, then you might take a word or of counsel from your elder and from the Torah and say, you know, before it gets too late and you make too much damage, you cause too much damage, before you create too much havoc with your life, before you go off on too many different wild goose trails, perhaps now would be a good day, and now would be a good time to start focusing on not just how you're going to finish your life, but how you're going to impact the generations to come. What words you will leave behind, what blessings you will leave behind. I told you about Sarah's tent, right? Sarah's tent stood there, and it was the place from which there was a knowledge that sweet fragrances could come, because they had come from there for many, many years, many days, day after day. Good times, bad times. Sickness and health, they came. The sweet fragrances of the cooking, baking bread. Light had emanated from that tent. Activity, bustling activity, energy, passion had come forth from that tent. Laughter had come forth from that tent. Now, these are the ways in which we impact our present and our future generations. How much sweet fragrance are you leaving? Not how much arguments have you been doing, how many debates have you won. How much sweet fragrance of the kingdom have you left behind, are you leaving behind? Not how much criticism and sarcasm and cynicism and profanity have you deposited in the world. How much blessing have you left in the world? How much blessing have you imparted to real people and to places where you've lived? How much imparted have you left? How much light have you cast? How much divine light now is in the world because it came through the tungsten filament of your life? You know, light is basically a product. I think you know this. Light is pulsing energy processed through resistance. An energy source, pulsing electrons, a filament that gives resistance, that causes heat and light to burst forth. So, out of all the tribulations, out of all the trials, out of all the resistance of your physical body and life and your circumstances, how much has light been introduced into the world? These are the things of our cross-generational impact. All right. Passing the baton, changing the guard. It is one thing for an individual to personally walk with the Holy One. It's one thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing for us to walk with the Holy One, to have lives of prayer and meditation and service to the world, to the people around us. That's a wonderful thing. Then to do that for a decade or 2 decades or 5 decades or 10 decades or whatever the case God may give you, to do that is truly wonderful. But it is entirely another thing to pass the values, the experiences, and the ways of the Holy One as they manifest in your life. The ways of relating to the creation, the ways of relating to other people, to societies, to cultures, that you learn from walking with the children, walking with the Holy One, on to your children and your grandchildren, or your nieces and or your nephews, and or anyone else in your neighborhood that comes along and actually sees you as being a Sarah's tent in your world. And we are the tabernacle of the Holy Spirit, the temple of the Holy Spirit. And the imagery is that, and I'll get to maybe that about why that's the imagery of Sarah's tent. So this should lead us to meditate on the idea of what it means to pass the torch. One of the songs that most of you know I've written is a Hanukkah song, and we're only 3 weeks away. Only about 6 weeks away from Hanukkah. And a part of that is it's the song of Mattathias. Mattathias gathering his children around him in the traumatic days right before it's after the abomination of desolation, but before the redemption has taken place, before the redemption has even begun. And trauma is all around. The world seems to be collapsing around their heads. And the first verse of it is 3 verses of it, but the first verse of it goes like this: Gather round, my children, hear your Father's heart. In these quickly changing times, we may soon be torn apart, for storm clouds are gathering and darkness closes in. And the Prince of Darkness calls to us. He wants us to become like him. Long ago, my children, in darker times than these, the voice of God spoke forth the light, and it brought the darkness to its knees. And God gave this gift to Avram, to Yitzhak and Yaakov, a torch to pass from hand to hand until it reaches around the globe. But as long as there's one candle burning, there will be light. So stand strong, keep seeking, keep learning, keep the candle burning bright, and never surrender to the night. Now, the line I wanted you to catch was that this is a torch. The kingdom of God, the covenant that God made with Avram, the gift of his presence among us, the wisdom of his Torah. This is a torch, a light source to pass from hand to hand until it reaches around the globe. And I know I've probably, that last word probably offended my flat earth brethren, but just picture it with me. Until it reaches around the earth, whatever it may be. So we have this issue of the death of Sarah. Who will carry the torch? Who will bear the light? Who will bring the fragrance? Who will awaken the passion, the energy? Who will bring the laughter into the world? The hope? Well, this is our task. Perhaps it's someone in this room. Perhaps it's many of you, hopefully, watching on the video, on the internet today, or who will watch it later. Someone has to carry the torch of Sarah. Someone has to carry the life force of Sarah. The parsha is not called the death of Sarah. The name of the parsha is Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah. Her life goes on. Her life force is within you, and let's talk about what that is. I want to talk to you a little bit about Sarah and some legends, some midrash. Again, every time I do this, I am not trying to tell you that the Midrash is telling you existential fact or empirical truth. If you understand how Yeshua taught through parables, you understand how the rabbis use Midrash. This is a ways to awaken something in your spirit by telling stories that awaken deep, deep wisdom within you that are not related to the factuality of what took place or not. But here's the legend, the Midrash of Sarah, Sarah's tent. The Midrash of Sarah's tent is a beautiful story. It's a beautiful parable. And so that every day, Sarah's tent had three factors. Every day of her life, three things attached themselves in Sarah's tent. One thing was that every Sabbath, every Erev Shabbat, every evening of the Friday, the anniversary of the seventh day of creation, every one of those times, Sarah would light candles in her tent. Her tent would be, and the light would continue, the candles would continue to burn constantly all through the week until she lit candles again on the next Friday night. So basically 7 days of lit candles, the candles would stay lit. It was a miracle, according to the Midrash. Of course, if you light a candle and you try to see if it stays lit for 7 days. It won't happen. It will burn its way down no matter how big a candle you choose to employ. It's just the nature of the heat. So the first thing was that there was eternal light. A ner tamid came out of Sarah's tent. Now, some of you will recognize that phrase, and some of you will think, this is almost like the temple. Let's see, the temple or the tabernacle. There was this menorah, and it continued burning at all times, and maybe there's some connection here. So the first legend, the first midrash is that the first item of Sarah's tent was there was a ner tamid, a light came from her lighting the candles every Friday night. And it stayed, in effect, stayed working all week long. All through the days, all through the nights, all through the troubles, all through the joyful times, all through the tears, all through the laughter, her light continued to burn, as long as there's one candle burning. Now, the second part of the Midrash, the second part of the ancient story, the parable, is that whenever she made her challah, her bread for the Erev Shabbat, to break the bread on Erev Shabbat, that when she did this, that the bread smelled sweetly and filled the entire camp with its fragrance, and beyond that, it stayed fresh all the way until the next Sabbath when she replaced it with new challahs. It stayed fresh, and not only did it stay fresh, it was always enough. If it had to multiply in order to feed whoever was coming, it multiplied in Sarah's tent. This is the parable. Now, I hope your things are popping in your head, and the Yeshua's teachings and Yeshua's miracles are happening. I'm the bread of life, he said. And then he kept breaking bread, and it kept multiplying because it was always enough for whatever the circumstances were. This was the legend of Sarah's tent. Oh, there's so much more here than we knew. Sarah's tent was the light. He said, I'm the light of the world. I'm the candle that keeps burning. I am the bread of life. And he kept proving these different things in these processes. And the third thing that happened to the Midrash, in the Midrash about Sarah's tent, was that connected to it, descending into it, but hovering above it, connected to it, descending into it, but hovering above it, was the cloud of the manifest presence of the creator of the universe, was the Holy One. The Shekinah, as it's often called, Shekinah El. And so this is this concept of, and you say, whoa, this does sound a little bit like the temple, doesn't it? Or the tabernacle in the wilderness, the light always burning, the bread on the table of showbread, and the Shekinah, the manifest presence of God hovering over the tent, over the place. This sounds a lot like the tabernacle. It sounds a lot like the temple, and we are the temple of, it's supposed to sound a whole lot like us. As a matter of fact, this is part of our usness. Part of our identity is that we would carry these things. Now, do you physically have candles that burn constantly? I hope you do. Good luck for you. Tell me if you do. I want to come to your house and take a picture. Do you have bread that stays fresh and that multiplies itself when necessary? That would be wonderful. I hope you have those experiences. And if you do, take a video, send it into YouTube, and I'll watch it. Do you physically have a physical, visible manifestation like Pigpen with the cloud and the in the comic book, where you actually see the cloud hovering over you wherever you walk and wherever you go or wherever you may be located? It would be wonderful to see. We'd put you in a comic strip, but more than likely, we're not going to see. This is a parable. Remember, this is a parable. This is a story. So what are the evidences of Sarah's life? The evidence of Sarah's life are you are providing light to the world. You are providing food, and it never runs out. It never runs dry. You are always providing bread for the world. That doesn't mean just physical bread. The bread of life. The essence of sweetness, of the goodness of life. And then you are manifesting over your life, the presence of God is manifesting. His character, his attributes, his majesty is evident whenever someone sees your life. They begin to see reflections like this. The moon provides a reflection of the light of the sun. Moon doesn't have its own light. It just reflects the light of the sun. So it is with us. We're supposed to be like that. We're reflecting in our own physical lives the light of that to which we're attached, the light of the Holy One himself. So Sarah's life. How are we doing carrying the torch of Sarah's life into our worlds? The world is desperately in need of Sarah's light, of Sarah's bread, of Sarah's cloud, the Holy One's cloud. This is where so I encourage you as we go forward with the Parsha today, with our Shabbat studies, with our Shabbat experiences and delighting in his presence, to reconnect with the rock from which we were hewn, particularly the Sarah side of it, first, and then we'll get to the Abrahamic side later. So, what we begin, if you would read with me, stand with me, we're going to read from chapter 23 of Genesis, the first section of our Parsha. We stand in honor of the beauty of his words and the majesty of the one who wrote them and one who is now speaking into our hearts. And we say this prayer as with the psalmist. Open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things from your Torah. For we are but strangers in this world. Do not hide your commandments from us, and our souls cry out for your judgments and your justice at all times. Amen. Beginning with verse 1 of chapter 23. Sarah lived 100 years, and 20 years, and 7 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. And then Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And then Abraham stood up from before his dead, and he spoke to the sons of Chet, saying, I am a foreigner, a wanderer, and a visitor among you. Give me property for a burial place among you, a caver among you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. And the sons of Chet answered Abraham, saying, Hear us, O my Lord. You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our burial places. None of us will withhold from you his burial place, his own burial place, that you may bury your dead. And then Abraham stood up, and he bowed before the people of the land, the sons of Chet, and he spoke to them, saying, If it is your wish or your will that I bury my dead out of my sight, then Shema, hear me, and have a meeting with Ephron, the son of Zohar, for me, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he possesses, which is at the end of his field. Let him give it to me at the full price, as property or possession for a burial place among you. And now Ephron dwelt among the sons of Chet, and Ephron the Hittite, or the Heti, answered Avram in the presence of all the sons of Chet. He entered the gate of the city, saying, No, my Lord, hear me, Shema me. I give you the field, and the cave that is in it. I give it to you. In the presence of the sons of my people, I give it to you. bury your dead. Then Abraham bowed himself down before the people of the land. And he spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land. And he said, if you will give it, then please shema me. I will give you money for the field. Take it from me, and I will bury my dead there. And Ephron answered Abraham and saying to him, my lord, listen to me. Shema me. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between you and me? So bury your dead. And Abraham listened to Ephron. And Abraham weighed out the silver for Ephron, which he had named in the hearing of the sons of Het, 400 shekels of silver, currency of the merchants. And so the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, which was before Mamre, the field and the cave which was in it, and all the orchard that was in the field, the trees that were in the field, all within the surrounding borders, were deeded to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the sons of Het, before all who went in at the gate of his city. And after this, Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave, in the field of Machpelah, before Mamre, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And so the field and the cave that is in it were deeded to Abraham by the sons of Het as property for a burial place. Amen. You may be seated. Torah is usually very concise. It doesn't go off telling long stories involving dialogue between parties and the actual words that were spoken in years and years ago that we really probably, why do we need to know? All this shema me, no shema me, no shema me, no shema me. Bury your dead, bury your dead, bury your dead, bury your dead. I give it to you. Why is Torah so suddenly so glib? So full of words, so willing to tell this long and detailed, hairy story about negotiations over a burial plot. Well, burial plots will become very important in many parts of the story of the Holy One, not the least of which is Mashiach himself, Messiah himself, and the burial place of another gentleman, Yosef of Arimathea, will be mentioned in later days. This whole issue is very important to us, but there's something about this cave, this location, this land. So I've told you one midrash about Sarah's tent. How about I tell you another one? How about we have another little story, a little parable about Machpelah. Double, meaning two parts. Okay, so let me tell you the story. And again, this is not about its factual accuracy. This is a parable told by the sages to help us awaken to the idea of the preciousness of every piece of earth, every location, every piece of land, every square inch of land that we touch. And it starts with Machpelah. So what is Machpelah? The legends of the cave. The legends of the cave is that it was discovered before this by Avram. It wasn't just, how did he know what to ask for? He asked for a cave. He asked for a hole in the ground. He asked for a hole in the ground out in the middle of the desert, okay, outside the city of Hebron. And why? How did he know to ask for that particular hole in the ground? And he wanted that one. He wanted that one, the cave that was being possessed by Ephron the Hittite, the Hittite. And the story is, the legend is that, you remember back in chapter 18, and we had this visitation. We had the three Anashim, the three standing men came, the heat of the day. Avram was out in front of his tent, and he ran to them and met with them, and they finally agreed after his imploring of them to do so, to stay and have a meal with him. The angelic visitors were going to have a visit, and the Holy One himself was going to visit. And Avram did several things. He brought water, washed their feet, all sorts of things, and he went and prepared a meal, and he had to go looking for a calf. He went looking for a calf. Remember this part of the story. And he brought back the fatted calf. He killed the fatted calf, brought it back, and fed them a feast. Okay. But the part of the story that goes in the legend is this, that when he went to look for the calf ran away. The calf got scared, did what calves do, and took off. And so Abraham had to chase the calf. Abraham followed, pursued the calf, left the 90 and 9, went to, you know the story, and he went after the calf, and he chased the calf, and the calf went and hid until it found the cave of Machpelah, the cave outside of the city of Hebron. And Abraham goes into the cave after the calf. This is all part of the legend, part of the Midrash. And when Avram goes into the cave, now, anyone ever walked into a cave? Your eyes are not ready for this. Even if you were ready for this, without some sort of a torch or without some sort of a light, you can't see what's going on in the cave. So understand that no one knew what was in the cave. And Avram, in his natural sense, wouldn't have seen what was in the cave. But according to this great Midrash, the great story, Avram goes in there, and suddenly his eyes are opened, and he is illumined to see in the dark. And what he sees is amazing. Inside, in this cave, it's a double cave. It has an above side and a below side. It has a above ground side and a deep cavernous. And it is the entrance, he sees it, and it is the way, the entrance, the gate to the Garden of Eden. It is the entrance point for the Garden of Eden. Above it lies our natural world. Below, beneath, past through the portal that you can go through, the other side of the half lies the Garden of Eden. That's enough by itself. That's fun by itself, right? Okay. And so he opens his eyes and he looks, and right in front there's candles burning in the spiritual realm. There's eternal candles are burning around the entrance to the Garden of Eden. And they never go out. And they never flicker. They just burn. And he can, in the light of those candles, he sees two parallel, side-by-side gravestones. You actually laid your dead on the stone. You covered it. And so on one side was Adam, and on the other side was Hava. And they had died and been interred by the Holy One there in this cave where they sought to go, which was to the entrance, back to the entrance of the Garden of Eden. Now, this is all legend. It is all Midrash. It's told you for a purpose. It is a parable told to you for a purpose. That, first of all, there is a draw in each of you being called. You're being called back to the Garden of Eden. Eden lost. Eden, we want it to be found. We want this draw back to Eden. Every human being that you will see is being drawn back to Eden. No matter what their behavior is right now, no matter what their attitude is right now, no matter what their history, their physical activities are, no matter how bad their behavior is, they are being drawn back to Eden. As long as they're still alive, they're being drawn back to Eden, and they will be drawn back to Eden until the day that they die, like Adam and Hava in this legend, in this Midrash. Now, so the second thing that teaches you, that he teaches, is that there is this, the Holy One shines a light upon the souls of each of his people, each of those who even don't know they're his people. Each of those are being called. There's this divine light, this eternal light that's in. It's kind of comparable to the light of Sarah's tent. It's in the Machpelah. Well, the story is that seeing all these things, Abraham has this revelation. This is the very entrance to the Garden of Eden. This is the place where we go to. We can't wait to go to we'll have this entry point. I have to have this piece of property. Whatever it costs, I will pay. I am drawn to it. This piece of property, this cave, I must have. And so whenever Sarah passed away, he was actually in Beersheba. He and his sons were doing flocks and herds in Beersheba. They had to go, and they found her in Kiryat Arba, and it's like the Holy One spoke to Avram and said, this is your time. This is the time. This is not just about you burying or mourning Sarah. This is the opportunity you have in front of the sons of Het to take possession of this property. It's not really theirs anyway. They are visitors. The sons of Het, according Hittites, are of Turkish, the area of Turkey. They were all just visitors. They were all just immigrants who had come kind of colonizing. And they and the Philistines. The Philistines came the other direction, and they were filling this area. They were just interlopers. They were just occupiers, but they were in possession, and possession is 9/10 of the law, as we say in America. And so their rights had to be purchased, and so he purchased them. So the sons of Het, and they were sons of Japhet, Ham, Japhet, and Shem. These are the three sons of Noah. So we have these Japheti, these people from Japhet. We have Abraham, who is a Shemi, who is of the descendants of Shem, and all around them they have the Canaanites, who are the descendants of Ham. We have it all right here in this little package at this one particular time. And so after he discovers the cave, he just resolves he's going to buy it. Whenever Sarah passes away, this is his chance. Now we get into the issue of the negotiations, and we are told these negotiations in great detail. If you've ever been to a market, shuk in Israel or the Middle East, anywhere, even some places in Europe or Asia, you go to the shuk, you go to the marketplace, and it's a little dance you dance. It's here in America, you have prices on your things, and you go and you pick it up and you pay the price, and you go to the shop, go to the cash register, and you don't say, I think I'll only pay. I give you $20 for it. He said, no, the price is right on it. The sticker's on it. This is what it is, and we don't. That's not a shuk in the Middle East. A shuk in the Middle East. Here it is. What will you give me? I'll give it to you. I'm your friend. And there's this tongue-in-cheek banter that goes back and forth. For my enemies, the price would be 1,000 shekels. But you're not my enemy. You are my friend. For my friend, I give it to you for 500 shekels. And of course, the value is about 20 shekels. and this little dance of is going on. So Ephron the Heti and Abraham are doing this little dance. But Abraham doesn't dance very well. And so he says, I give it to you. It means I'm not giving it to you. I will not give it to you, not the way you think. I will sell it to you, but I will sell it to you for full value. And you can't pay the value, so, and all this bury your dead and all these different things. Go bury your dead somewhere else. and all this little negotiations taking place between Abraham and Ephron the Heti. And finally, Abraham says, I will pay you whatever it is worth. Never say that in a shuk. And never say that in a marketplace in Israel. I will pay you what it is worth, because now you define what it is worth, and the price is going to be exorbitant. And so Ephron says, the price, it is worth 400 shekels. Let's translate that. It is worth $400 million. Just a wink in his eye. Let's see what kind of response I get with that. And Abraham says, son, bring the chest. Bring the silver. Bring the chest out. And there's this public discussion, and it's not like he just pours it out in a big pile and says, here it is. He goes and he counts it to them. 1, 2, a shekel per coin. 1, 2, 3, 4. I got to count to 400 in front of you. 400 times he reached his hand into the chest, and 400 times he brought out 1 shekel of silver, and he presented it to him, and he bought the piece of property. Exorbitant price. $400 million in today's currency, you might think. I'm just giving you a rough idea. Well worth more than what the price of the land, especially to someone who doesn't really even own it. But he purchased this piece of property because, wouldn't you, if you had found a pearl in a field, if you had found a pearl in a field, wouldn't you sell everything you had? Yeshua said. Wouldn't you sell everything you had and go back and buy the pearl of great price? Buy the field within the pearl of great price just to have the pearl? Well, he had found the cave of Machpelah. He had found the entrance of the Garden of Eden, according to the legend. He had sensed that this is the place where we're all seeking to go, and there is a passageway, an entranceway to that. Well, so he paid exorbitant, through-the-nose price. Now, who knows? I mean, you picture what was being said by the Hittites. The old stories from America about the country bumpkin and the city slicker and the whatever, and how, boy, we took advantage of him. I mean, he paid 400 shekels for that. And this is in the Negev, and it's a hole in the ground. And if you've ever been to West Texas and looked at the land out there and priced the land and what it's really worth, it's worth about $5 an acre. It's really not worth much because you can't grow anything on it. It's in the desert, at least if you don't have the vision for the value that's within it, the understanding of what it really can produce, what it really entails. Now, I said this has to do with every square inch of the place. This is a parable, and it talks to every square inch on the face of the earth. It talks to your city. It talks to your neighborhood. It talks to your house and your land where you live. It talks to whatever, every square inch of the earth, every habitation that you may live, every city, is a entry point to the Garden of Eden, potentially. If someone has the vision, if someone has the eyes, you can say, how can we release the Garden of Eden here? This is part of the grand redemptive plan for creation, to restore it inch by inch and acre by acre, hillside by hillside, valley by valley, village by village, to its original Edenic state of beauty and fruitfulness and shalom and inner working and harmony. This is what. So now look at your city. Look at your. And last week we got the privilege of being part of a dedication of the house of Debbie over there, and I hope many of you got to go and enjoy that process. That house has now been constituted as a doorway, a passageway, a portal into the Garden of Eden. We have to now begin to draw the energy of Eden into that house and into the people who live there, the people who come there and visit, the people who come have dinner there, the people who walk by there in their morning jog, whatever, to draw that energy of Eden. This is that idea of two worlds. There's two worlds. There's a double cave wherever you live. Your house, Troy, and your house, Brent and Susan, and Rory, and Chuck and Susie. Your places are all passageways, portals, to release the Garden of Eden into this world. One level at a time. One breath, one breeze at a time of the scent of the fragrance of the goodness of God. The light of the Holy One as well. Your house, your place, your land should be a light like these eternal candles that the Midrash says were around the cave of Machpelah, supernaturally providing light to your world. Okay, that's the legends of the cave. And I hope you see now that where we live and where we go and the places that we interact with are all strategic assignments. There is no just we're passing through. There is no just, I don't like it here. Well, you can say that. Your flesh is telling you things like that. There's nothing for me here. I'm not excited. There's nothing to do here. I mean, I hear people say these things all the time. This is the armpit of society, of the world. This is whatever you, and it's like, okay, your vision is lacking. You haven't chased the calf yet. Because when you chase the calf, when you go inside, you begin to see, let your eyes be illumined, you see that everywhere you are, wherever you are, is a gateway to Eden. It is the way in which we can release the heavenly, the eternal, the beautiful things of life into this world. Okay. We have the haggling. We have the revelation of Ephron's exorbitant price. We have the public weighing out of the transfer. And then we have this deed. Actually, there's no written deed. In Hebrew, in ancient tradition, there was no written deed. It was just a witnessed ceremony. And sometimes people would take off a shoe, or sometimes people would pick up the dirt and put it in the other person's hands. And this was a transfer of ownership. All right. We have a few minutes left. I've kind of opened up this one part of the story of Chayei Sarah. The life force of Sarah. Sarah is going to be buried in that cave. But here's the other thing. Not just Sarah is going to be buried in that cave. That's where Avram's remains are going to wind up as well. And then Yitzhak. And then Rivka. And then Yaakov. And then Leah. And again, my big question is, can these bones live? Can these bones live in this cave, in this valley of dry bones? Can there be a resurrection? Can the life force of Sarah and the life force of Abraham, and the life force of Yitzhak, and the life force of Rivka, the life force of Yaakov, and the life force of Leah, can these torches, these cross-generational torches, can they awaken? And can they awaken in you? Can they awaken in us? Can they awaken now? Or are we too preoccupied? Are we too distracted? You say, what would I be distracted by? Doesn't take long to see. What are people talking about? What are the social media full of? What are the news broadcasts, or whatever you want to call those things nowadays? What are they full of? What are they talking? What is everybody so excited about? Well, there's basically, I'm not even going to mention them to you. You know what they are. So the question becomes, is that what is preoccupying our mind? Is that what is getting our emotions caught up? Is getting our passions raised up? Is that what is firing us up? Or are we passionate about the life force of Sarah, of Avram, of Yitzhak, of Yaakov, of Rivka, of Leah coming forth in our lives? Are we passionate about bringing the light of the Holy One to bear, the sweet fragrance of Eden coming into our world? What are we passionate about? And this is one of those days when we're nearing the crest of this patriarchal narrative, trying to get us to awaken to the fact that it didn't die with Abraham. It didn't die with Sarah. It didn't die with Yitzhak. It didn't die with Yaakov. It didn't die with Moshe. It didn't die with Aaron. It didn't die with Yehoshua. It didn't die with David. It didn't die with Solomon. It's still alive. The life force of Sarah is still alive, waiting to be picked up like a torch and someone else to carry it and walk it forward. All right, I'm going to move on to the next part of the story. Who will be brought to Sarah's tent? We have some fascinating things happen. Avram, after he buries Sarah, sometime after, doesn't tell us how long, he's got to go act on the information, the message he got at the end of the last parsha. Wait a minute, there's 8 sons and a daughter born to Milcah, born to Nahor through Milcah. There's a whole new generation of people that came from my background, from my lineage back there. Yitzhak's 40 years old and doesn't look like he's too busy working with me and helping me and serving me to go look for a bride or to find a bride. I'm not sure I want him to have one here of the sons of Het, the Yaphati. I'm not sure I want him to have of the sons of Canaan, the sons of Ham through Mitzrayim, or through, in this case, through Hanan. I don't want him to get from the sons and the daughters of Mitzrayim, of Egypt, because they're also sons of Ham, and they have their. I don't want them the sons of Ishmael or the daughters of Ishmael. I don't want this. Where will I go, and where will I find a bride for my son before I pass away? Where will I find Isha? Where will I find Emma? Not only a wife for Yitzhak, but where will I find a matriarch for the people of God? Someone to carry this torch of Sarah. And so he decides he's going to send his servant. We don't even know his name, or we probably do know his name, but we're not told his name in this press. Just the senior servant, the servant who has served him the longest period of time. He calls his servant to him, and he says to them, chapter 24, he says, please put your hand under, in English we read my thigh. It's close enough. And I will make you swear by the Holy One, the God of heaven and the God of the earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanite among whom I dwell. There is something about the Canaanite and their lifestyle and their culture and their priorities and their values and their behaviors and their distractions that makes it not a good idea for a son of the covenant who is bringing forth the light of the covenant into the world to have someone of their lineage. They may be pretty, they may be beautiful, they may be intelligent, they may be good business people, that they are not the perfect person. So he says, don't bring one back. Don't bring a wife from the daughters of the Canaanite, among whom I dwell. But verse 4, go to my country and to my family. Actually, in Hebrew, it's mimoldet, my lineage, my physical lineage, ascendants, and take a wife for my son Yitzhak. And the servant said to him, perhaps the woman will not be willing to follow me to this land. Perhaps the woman won't see this being the entrance to the Garden of Eden, and won't decide, I want to go and marry someone I've never met 450 miles to 500 miles away from where I live, in a culture that I don't understand, speaking a language I don't know. And perhaps it will happen. May I take your son back to the land from which you came? And Abraham said to him, beware that you do not take my son back there. The Holy One, God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my family, who spoke to me and swore to me, saying, to your seed I will give this land, he will send his angel before you. Now, Abraham knew this angel. Do you know this angel? He will send his angel before you. The Holy One will send his angel before you. I hate when people get too crazy about angels, but also get a little suspicious or worried when they don't talk about them at all, when they don't understand the angelic protection at all. Now, on several special occasions among the Hebrew people, we sing this song called B'Shem Hashem. Anybody know the song B'Shem Hashem? And B'Shem Hashem, in the name of the Holy One, the God of Israel, and then it says, and Michael is to my right. Michael. Michael is to my right, and Gabriel is to my left, and behind me is Uriel, and before me goes Raphael, and above me, and above my head, above your head, as the case may be, is the manifest presence, the Shekinah of God. Now, this is a lesson of Parsha Chayei Sarah that we really need to get, that we are not alone in this world making our own way, that we are not limited to our own intelligence, our own devices, our own reason, our own logic, or our own level of knowledge. Around us on all sides are the angels of the Holy One. The issue is, can we cooperate and co-labor with them in the plan? And above us is the manifest presence of the Holy One, and that's the way it is designed to be. I see us all trying really hard to make our own way, and the Holy One says, you're having to fight with angels to do that. You're having to wrestle with the powers of heaven to do that. Learn to go walk in my pathway, walk in my steps with my leadership. Well, this thing that Avraham is being asked is, why on earth would a woman come back with me? She's not going to, our world is not going to, this is not a Hallmark movie. There's no romance. There's nothing to attract her. Why would a woman 450 miles away from us that we don't even know who it is, you can't give me a name, you can't give me a location, all you can give me is a city to dwell in, and it's got to be somebody from your relatives, and how am I supposed to know that? And I'm supposed to go to her and say, what? I want you to come and move 450 miles away, down to Canaan, and I want you to marry a man you've never met, and I want you to live and be a matriarch to a bunch of people who are always on the tip of some anti-Semite sphere all their life. And she's going to say, okay, I'm in. What if she doesn't like that? What if that doesn't convince her? What if that's not good enough for her? And he says, no, don't you worry. It's not about your reason or your persuasive ability. It's not about your persuasive ability or using the right words, the right phrases. What it's about is the fact that you have the angel of the Holy One with you, and Gabriel, and Michael, and Raphael, and Uriel, and Shekinah. And this is what will bring it to pass. And Abraham is completely confident in that. And so he says, verse 8, if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be released from this oath. Only just don't bring my son back there. And so the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master, and he swore to him concerning the matter. And the servant took 10 of his master's camels, 10 camels, and he departed, with all his master's goods in his hand. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia, 450 miles away, to the city of Nahor. And he made his camels kneel down outside the city by a well of water at evening time, when the women went out to draw water. And then he said, now, this is fascinating. I thought we were getting a lot of detail about the transaction between Ephron the Hittite and Avram. More detail than we needed to know. You think that was a lot of detail? We're about to get a lot of detail, or more of detail than that. And it's going to start with this particular passage. And what we're going to find is this servant, this who served Abraham the longest, is going to do something on this mundane task, kind of crazy task of going in the dirty, hot weather, in the desert, into the villages, up the hills and the mountains, with dirt on his feet, and his sweat pouring out of his sweat glands, and camels smelling like camels, and all this happening. He is going to sit there, and he's going to stop, and he's going to pray. He's going to infuse the mundane with the holiness and the relationship that he has with God. It's fascinating. He's going to tell you what he's going to pray. Listen to the prayer. He prays, O Holy One, God of my master Avram. Doesn't even call him his own deity. O Holy One, God of my master Avram. In English it says, please give me success this day. In Hebrew, the better word translation would be favor. Give me favor this day. And show chesed, show kindness to my master Avram. There are two factors, two parts of the well, of the introduction. One of them is he seeks favor for himself. And one of them, he seeks kindness for Abraham, his master. He is not selfish. Well, he does think of his own needs. His own need is for favor. But the favor is only needed because he wants to do a blessing to Abraham. He is unselfish in what he's doing, and yet he knows that he needs to get blessed as well. He needs to have what he needs to have to fulfill his purposes. So he asks for favor for himself, and he asks for hesed to his master, Abraham. Chesed, translated in English usually as what? What does it say here? Kindness. It's that plus 1,000 times more. Chesed is also translated many times as love. In the scripture, love, it's kindness, it's compassion, it's all these. What chesed is the covenant faithfulness. It is faithfulness to covenant. So show covenant faithfulness that manifests in love and in kindness and all the things that are necessary for my master, Avraham. Now, I'll go on. He's going to go on, and he's going to ask. He's going to continue his prayer, verse 13. Behold, I stand at the well of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Now let it be. Now this is his petition. He's made his request, now his petition. Now let it be that the young woman to whom I say, please let down your pitcher that I may drink. And she says, drink, and I will also give your camels a drink. Let her be the one you have appointed for your servant Yitzhak. And by this I will know that you have shown hesed to my master. This hesed to the master is a critical aspect, and we'll talk about this in a little while, and why the narrative is given to us in the detail it's given. The servant's prayer is spoken verbatim, is given verbatim. And what was he asking for? For favor for himself, for this mission, and that he might show hesed to his master Avram, because hesed is very important to Avram and his household, and to Sarah and her household. Hesed, this kindness, covenant faithfulness, kindness that works its way out in acts of goodness, acts of mercy and love and compassion to other people. This is very important to the people of the covenant. I'm going to fast forward. You know what happens. First of all, it was a crazy fleece. It ain't going to happen, right? It's you take your 18-wheeler to the local gas station. You got 10 18-wheelers. You got a fleet of 10 18-wheelers at your local gas station. And you pull up, and there's a little girl driving her Honda at the gas pumps, putting $10 worth of regular in her Honda. And you and your 10 drivers pull these 10 18-wheelers up to the pumps in the back, where the big trucks go. And they're empty from a long journey. And you come face to face with this girl who's driving her little Honda with her nice little fingernails all painted up. Toenails are painted, and she's all dressed for whatever. And she just came to get $10 worth of gas for her Honda. And you look at her and you say to her, could I have a 44-ounce soda? And maybe a candy bar for some snacks, for some energy. And she's going to say, hold it right there. Not only will I give you a 44-ounce soda and a candy bar for your energy, let me go fill up every one of those 10 trucks with gasoline, with fuel, at great expense, great price, and great energy being expended. It's a crazy fleece. He said, now let that be the one. When that happens, let that be the one you have chosen for my son, my master's son, Yitzhak. And lo and behold, he sees this girl. He doesn't know who she is. He makes the strange fleece proposition. And she drops everything. And she gives him a drink. And he says, no, let me water your thirsty camels, 25 gallons apiece. The jar couldn't be more than 5 gallons. She's got to go down to the water. How many times is that? 10 times 25. That's 250. That's a lot. 50 times carrying a full load of 5 gallons of water. That's assuming it's a 5-gallon jug. This woman is busy the rest of the day watering his camels. And it's sundown. It's dark. It's already been told we're evening time. It's like, whoa, how in the world did that happen? Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, Raphael, Shekinah, angel of the Holy One. This sort of thing happens in that process. And it says that when it was over, the servant stood there gaping at her. I bet he did. I mean, I bet he did. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you have it? He stood there gaping at her, and then it says he did two things. He, again, interjecting the holiness realm into the mundane, the activity of this world, the common things of this world. So he said he bowed his head, he bowed to the ground, and he worshiped. This is the first time in the whole Torah, the first instance in the whole Torah, of someone doing something that has actual actions attached to it that is worship. The first time it was mentioned, first time shakah was mentioned in Hebrew, the first time worship was mentioned, it was on Mount Moriah, and all it said was, Abraham said, me and the boy are going to go worship. Me and the boy are going to go shakah. That's all that, but he didn't tell us what it looked like. We don't know what shakah looked like, but this time we're given the pictures of what does worship look like. What does, in the Holy One's eyes, what is worship? Now, most of you are probably, in your mind, we live in the 21st century. We live in the realm of charismata. We live in the world of evangelical services. We live in the world of church or the world of synagogue. And now we understand, we have these mindsets, these cultural viewpoints of what worship looks like. And usually it involves an instrument of music, usually some kind of sound system. Usually it involves multiple musicians. It involves a song leader or a worship leader, some human being on a platform making noise and making songs. It involves maybe some participation by the audience where they clap their hands or they raise their arms or they sing along with the hymn with the words out of the book. And we think this is worship. Or we say, no, it's the entire meeting that we have. We call it a worship service, and now it is worship. But that's not what the Torah calls worship. Worship is that's an abstract concept that someone has added. What is worship? What is the essence of worship? And so the servant infuses the dust of Haran, the dust of the earth, with this thing called worship. He bows himself to the earth, and he says, in his own words, this is his worship. And he says, hold on. Verse 27 of chapter 24. The man bowed his head, and he worshipped the Lord, Chayei, the Lord, and he said, Blessed be the Holy One, God of my master Avraham, who has not forsaken his chesed, his mercy, his acts of mercy, and his truth, his true direction, his guidance toward my master. And as for me being on the way, I'm on the way, the Holy One led me to the house of my master's brethren. Simple, 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 simple. Simple, you can call it thanksgiving, that's worship. You call it expression of relief and joy, celebration of personal the activities of God manifesting themselves in your life, a sense of your being loved and favored. Just in your private time, he bowed his head, he bowed low, shakad, and then he began to do. He blessed the Lord. I will bless the Lord at all times. So now, if we know what worship is, maybe we can make it not so complicated. It's really not complicated at all. It doesn't require a fellowship, doesn't require a meeting, doesn't require a gathering, doesn't require an assembly. As a matter of fact, it's done best if it's at least first done privately in this realm, and it is matter just of responding to the goodness of God. We're going to find the first communal worship service, celebration, in Torah as well. That'll be in Exodus at chapter 15, in the Song at the Sea. And again, it is not about having a meeting or an assembly. It is about people spontaneously responding to the favor of God shown upon their life and the miracles wrought for them. That is what true worship is. So how do we then realize what just happened to us? What do we just see? Why the detail? The detail is given to us so that we know that everything we're supposed to do in life, every assignment we have, every job, every task, every mundane thing that we are required to do to keep life going and keep things going on. Go to the grocery store, go to the coffee shop, go to the whatever, go to work. Everywhere we go, we are to infuse that mundane thing with something from the holy realm. What? To bless the prayer that he did first. Lay out, let it be, maybe find favor, ask for hesed for other people, the covenant faithfulness for other people in our lives that are precious to us, and then also infuse it with this thing called worship. You can do that. You must do that. This is where the light of Sarah, this is where the life of Sarah comes out in you. Where the life of Sarah and the life of Abraham and the life of the covenant comes forth in you. When you don't rely upon a meeting like this or some other form of meeting to be your worship service, your life is your worship service. Your day-to-day everything you do. And the key is, how can I infuse the Garden of Eden? How can I open the portal of this place, of my soul, to the Garden of Eden? How can I bring the light? How can I bring the bread, the sweet smell of the fragrance of the bread? How can I bring the manifest presence of Shekinah of the Holy One into this situation, however mundane it may seem, however unclean it may seem at this moment to me? It is, in his eyes, this is the gate of Eden. This is the place where all men are being drawn to the presence of the Holy One. Well, there's one thing more, and then I'll quit. There's much more in the parsha, but there's only one more thing I'll be able to cover. Whenever we have this strange thing, we have, not only do we have the actual details of what happened, the details of what the servant said, his exact prayer, his exact act of blessing the Holy One in worship. We have those exact things. And then he goes to Laban's house, which is a prototype of all the places we may go in captivity. There's so much allegory, so much process. The 400 shekels of silver that he weighed out. We've only seen 400 one more time in Torah. Your descendants will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. 400 shekels of oppression, of you having to purchase things that from someone you don't, and it'll be 400 years. 4 captivities. Anyway, that's part of the allegory. But what we have is whenever the servant begins to speak to Laban and to Bethuel, who was Rivka's father, the maiden's father, and the household, he recounts all the story that we just read. So we have it twice. But this time there's differences. And every time you see things repeated, look for the differences. There's a secret for you in the differences. So what are the major differences? The first major difference is whenever he says what he prayed, he said, show me favor and show chesed to my master Avram. When he says what he said, when he tells the people of Laban's house, he only says, I prayed, show me favor. He doesn't mention chesed at all. He doesn't show chesed for Avram at all. You say, well, that's just a strange coincidence. He just left it out. He just forgot he was in a hurry. And then you get to the issue then he talks about what happened when he worshiped. After she did all these things, and he worshiped, he bowed his head and worshiped, and he said, blessed be the Holy One, God of my father Abraham, God of my master Abraham. When he did all that, and he remember what he said? He said, who has shown me favor and who has shown hesed to my master Abraham. And strangely enough, again, he leaves that out when he's telling the story to the people of Laban's house, to the people of this culture. He leaves out the issue of showing hesed at all. There's no reference whatsoever to this idea of hesed to Master Avram or acts of kindness to them. And then whenever he describes the sequence in which he expressed himself and had conversation with Rivka at the end, in the original version, it says that he took a gold ring and 2 gold bracelets of great value out of his chest, and he put them on Rivka after she did all this thing and watered his camels. And then he said to her, after he put the gold, adorned her with this Psalm 45 bride attire, after he had made her a princess and decked her out in ways that we can't even imagine with beauty, then he says to her, who are you? What's your name? And what's your household? And she tells him, I am Rivka, I am the daughter of Nachor and Milcah. And he says, now I get it. I see why you're the one, because you're the descendant of my pastor. You're the father, the relative of my master. But whenever he tells the story to Laban, he reverses the situation. He says, and I inquired of her who she was, and she told me she was the relative of Nachor, and I blessed the Lord, and I pulled all my stuff out, and I gave her all these things. Why did he do it this way? Why the difference? Why these differences? Because, you see, you need to know what environment you are in. You need to know what the culture you are in values. The reason Rivka was delivered from this culture is because she, alone among them, valued hesed. Acts of kindness, physical acts of mercy, of compassion, and of love for another person, selfless love. She valued that, and she demonstrated that by her activity. But now you go to Laban's house where her culture is. And the rest of her household doesn't value hesed at all. What do they value? They value money. They value physical possessions. That's why the ring and they saw the ring and they saw the bracelets. And they were amazed. And he says, I put these things on, and my master, there was one other detail. Whenever Avram calls the servant, the Torah says that he was blessed in all things. Just generally, blessed in all things. But when the servant begins to tell Laban's house about it, he says, my master has been blessed in all things. He has men servants and female servants, and he has goats, and he has sheep, and he has oxen, and he has camels, and he has donkeys. He's got all these, and it's like, why did he tell them this stuff? Because that's what they needed to hear. Because that's what would attract their attention. That's what would get their attention to this whole process. And so he begins to do that. You say, that sounds almost manipulative. He says, no, it's just reality in life. You need to know who you're talking to before you talk. This is why I think modern forms of religion have real difficulty. We try to make one statement and believe everybody is listening to what we're saying and hearing what we're saying. And then they don't get it because we didn't present it in ways that they could understand. And we blame them because they're just too dull to get it. They're just too unspiritual to get it. Because we got it. But you are of a different culture. You're of a different calling. And therefore, you have to learn to tailor your conversations, tailor your testimonies to the what they can hear, what they're ready and able to hear. You say, but there's one standard of truth. Yes, there is. But not everybody can hear that truth. Not everybody can understand that truth. You don't like it. You don't make it up. You don't lie about it. But you tell it in ways that they can understand. So Abraham's servant tells it in ways that Laban's house can understand and grasp. And he focuses on two things, which are most of the cultures of the world. Wealth or money, possessions, that's always almost universal. And the second thing is family ties, the sentiment of family ties. The sentiment of family ties is not particularly spiritual. It's physical. It's fleshly. Not that we shouldn't love our fellow members of our families. We should. But the sentiment that goes with it is what he played into or he touched into. These people are the relatives of my master's brother, Nahor. We got this blood thicker than water thing going on. This is how the mafia works. This is how the gangs work. This is how this life works out there in the fleshly world. So don't get all excited about this. As a matter of fact, the Holy One had called Avram to Lech Lecha, and go out from your own family, transcend them, go beyond them. But now the servant is touching what attracts the attention, what perks up the ears of a pagan culture. Money and family. Family ties. The sentiment that comes with all that. As we get close to the American Thanksgiving celebration, now perhaps you can understand what's going to happen and what's not going to happen, what doesn't need to happen at your celebrations if you do them. We are called to be Sarah's tent. We are called to understand. We need to know where they are and touch them where they are and use vocabulary. Not that we're going to hide any truth from them, but we're going to present it in a way they can understand without being argumentative, ideological, or pursuing sentimentality and making them feel carrying guilt trips and manipulations. Love. Love is a complicated thing. Love in the Hebrew world, in the covenant world, in the kingdom world, in the Hebraic mindset of ahav, the sense of selflessness, the sense of understanding what needs to happen in the other person's life, not looking at that, how can I make them love me back? How can I make them do what I want them to do? We all, like American romantic love is, how can I make them love me? How can I make them want me? How can I make them think I'm wonderful? How can I make them attach themselves to me? How can I win them? And the Hebrew that's not love at all. That's witchcraft. That's how a witch tries to use a spell, cast a spell on somebody to make them like them, make them love them, make them behave in certain ways. So the Hebrew idea of love is different. It's what do I need to do to serve them? What do I need to do to bless them? What do I need to bring hope and life into their life? What do I need to do to bring them closer to the entrance point, the gate of the Garden of Eden in their world, in their life, in this moment? Well, we have come to the end of our time with regard to our group, our Around the Torah in 80 Minutes session that we have. For all those who have joined us by the magic of Facebook and those who will later see us on YouTube, thank you for joining in and tuning in. I pray that something that has been said, hopefully all that has been said, has awakened in you this hunger for Eden, a hunger to open that passageway, hunger for that divine light to emanate into your life and through your life into others. That the idea of having enough bread, having a fragrant, fresh bread of life to give to others is something that you are aspiring to. And the hunger to learn how to love the way God loves and the way God would have you love as opposed to loving selfishly. The joy and the benefit of having kindness, showing kindness, expecting nothing in return. I pray these things are alive and awake in you, and Sarah's life begins to manifest in your life. Amen. Shabbat shalom to you all, and we'll see you next week. Amen.